Welcome, everyone, to the third part in Right to Life of Michigan series, focusing on the dignity of life in the Chaldean community. Tonight, we tackle the very difficult subject of unplanned pregnancy and the emotions that accompany that experience. What is the reason for us presenting this discussion tonight? Why would we put ourselves out here and break open such a difficult reality? Well, we're here to raise awareness, to bring light to a subject that is often shrouded in darkness. We want to offer help, healing, and most of all, hope. We'd like to save and improve Chaldean lives, and we wish to speak up about the beauty and dignity of every human life, born and unborn. So let's get started. Joining me tonight are Janice Kizzy and Josephine Atisha. Janice Kizzy has a master's degree in social work and over 15 years of experience working with different populations. She specializes in working with children as young as 5 years old and clients working through traumatic experiences. She provides individual, family, and couples therapy. She's fluent in English, Chaldean, and Arabic, and has found this creates a comfortable environment for clients who prefer professional services in their native language. Through her experience, she realized that emotional healing is a part of a much bigger process. Her clients taught her that healing requires balance of mind and spirit. In order for the mind to heal, the spirit has to find a willingness to work, a sense of hope and purpose. Janice works with each client in identifying needs and to explore their purpose. She's the owner and therapist at Mind and Spirit Counseling in Sterling Heights, and she's been a volunteer with Right to Life of Michigan for over 6 years. Hi, Janice. Can you please tell us what led you to be involved in the pro-life movement?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tina. To be honest with you, my journey with the Right to Life movement started early on in my career as a social worker. As a new social worker, I had just graduated from my master's program and I had gotten my first job. And I remember I was excited to get whatever experience I could get. And I remember one day my manager coming up to me and saying to me, I have scheduled an appointment for a client at the abortion clinic. And she was trying to be very delicate because she didn't know where I stood on that matter. But she asked me how I felt about taking her to the abortion clinic to get the abortion. Where I stood, I was a social worker. I was pro-choice. I thought to myself, I would never have an abortion, but I'm not going to tell someone else not to. Plus, what kind of social worker would I be if I was judging people? And this is what my client's needs were. And so I took my client to the clinic. As I was sitting in the waiting room at the clinic and I was watching people walking in and the pamphlets around and things like that, I started to really think, and I thought to myself, I just drove this woman here to kill her baby. Why is it not okay for me to do that, but I'm okay with her doing it? And I felt a huge sense of guilt. I didn't really know why at that time, but I also knew that I had to, I didn't want to feel that way ever again. And so at that point, I was feeling a lot of guilt between, am I judging this person or am I guilty because am I feeling guilty because of this act? So after this experience, I kind of devoted myself to learning more about what abortion is really and what are the true impacts on women and like post-abortion and things like that. And after a lot of education, I came to know that after an abortion, it's not only the unborn child that gets affected. It's also other members of the family. It's also the parents. And it's not my job as a pro-life person to judge someone that had an abortion. And that's not what we do as pro-lifers. What we do is actually, we try to help people with love by telling them you're not judged, but we want to help you. We want to love you. We want you to heal. And so that's when when the pro-life movement became very real for me. And that's when I became a part of it, because my job as a social worker and as a therapist is to help people heal. And I felt like this was my way of loving these people, the people that are, post-abortive, and helping them heal.
Thank you, Janice. We're honored that you're here to help us.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have with us Josephina Tisha. She's a Chicago native and also lived in San Diego for over a decade. Now she lives in Sterling Heights with her family, which includes her 2 sons. She earned her Bachelor's of Arts in English at the University of San Diego and specialized in medieval literature, along with philosophy and history. She's fluent in several dialects of Aramaic. She can also read and write classical and modern Aramaic. She is an author of Before There Were Borders and is a candidate for a master's in public administration from Central Michigan University in fall 2020. Josephine is also a Right to Life of Michigan volunteer. Hi, Josephine.
Hi, Tina.
Please share with us, will you, what led you to the pro-life movement?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. So what brought me to the Right to Life movement is I was actually introduced by a mutual friend, and the Right to Life contacted me because they heard about my story. So ever since they've contacted me, I've been involved. So the reason why I'm involved is I had to personally deal with choosing life. I was confronted with the decision more than once. So exactly 7 years ago, like give or take a couple weeks, I found out I was pregnant. I was 27 years old. I had just graduated from college, had an exciting career in the building industry, and I thought I had it all. I was a couple days late, and I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant. And I felt like my whole world was over. And I immediately tried to reach out to the child's father and let him know that I was pregnant. And he was out of the country. So I was like, wait, maybe I'm not pregnant. Let me take a couple more tests. So I took 3 pregnancy tests and I was pregnant. And it was an unplanned pregnancy. I was unmarried. I was still living at home with my parents. And I was confronted with fear, confusion, and shame. I felt like, how could I do this? What will people think? Right away, I thought, oh my gosh, the church, what have I done? And the reason why I thought about that is because I was really, really involved in the church. I was a retreat leader, led on about 5 different retreats with the youth, and was also an altar server. So every Sunday Mass, at the same Mass, I was on the altar. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. What will my parents say? What will my family say? What I'm ruined, like I'm humiliated. That's it. That's my life. I'm over. And when I walked out of the bathroom, I thought I looked 9 months pregnant. Like I thought everybody knows. That's it. Everybody can see I'm pregnant. They know I'm pregnant. And I thought, like, I put God's upset with me. Like God's mad at me. And so I had Mass that day. I had to serve. So that same day, I just got changed, went to church, and I asked the priest if I can do confession, because I said I need to confess. I didn't like to serve Mass unless I went to confession. So he's like, yeah, sure, I got a couple minutes. So I confessed to him that I was pregnant. And he told me are those all your sins? And I said, yeah. He's like, did you engage in premarital sex? And I said, no, not since my last confession. No. He's like, okay, well, being pregnant's not a sin. And he said, congratulations. You're going to be a great mother. And all of a sudden I felt relief, because I'm like, I'm not in God's eyes, I'm not a sinner. So it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like, okay, I'm going to be a mom. It's okay. I'm going to be a mom. That's what God called me to do. I'm going to be a mom. So right away I went to my sister's house, and I had to tell her, because I tell my sister everything. So I told my sister, and she's like, so how far along do you think you are? I was like, probably 6 to 8 weeks. And she's like, you can't get an abortion. I know exactly what that looks like in the ultrasound. Like, you can't get an abortion. And at the time, she had just had 2 babies. Her son was not even a year old. He was like 8 months old. And her daughter was a year and 8 months old. So it's very vivid memory of what the ultrasounds look like at that time. So she's like, if you need anything, I'm here for you. She's like, did you tell mom and dad? I said, no. She's like, do you want me to go with you? I was like, yeah. So she came with me, and I told my parents. I told my mom. I didn't tell both of them, because anyway, so I told my mom, and my mom's like, so what are you going to do? And I told her, I have to have the baby. I can't murder the baby. The baby. And she said, no, it's not. She said, do you know what this will do to you? You'll never get married. What about the father? What about him? What's he going to do? Are you going to fix this? Like, okay, is he going to marry you? And I was like, I haven't even gotten to talk to him about it yet. Well, you need to figure it out. You need to do something about it. So my dad ended up finding out. She told my dad. And they said that I couldn't stay in the house anymore. So I was unwelcome in my parents' home. So my sister said, it's okay, you can live with me. So I lived with my sister, finally got a hold of the child's father, and he didn't believe I was pregnant. He's like, there's no way. He's like, you should get a blood test just in case. And I was like, okay. I took the blood test. I was pregnant. I was like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, so what do you want to do? I said, I want to get married. That's what, I'm pregnant. We should get married. And he told me that, you can have the baby and we don't have to get pregnant. And he was right at the time, but because like I was conditioned culturally to believe that you can't have a child unless you're married. I felt pressure also from my parents, who were like, you need to get married. And so I told him that, and I was like, it's not an option. Like, we have to. And so he's like, yeah, I don't think so. So I was like, okay, well then I'm still going to have this child, and I'll talk to you later. And so I'm lucky that I had a job that helped me get my mind off things. So like every day I would go to work, and weeks went by, even a couple months went by where he still didn't want to get married. And I was like, that's okay. God wants me to be a mom, and that's what I'm going to do. So every day on my way to work, I would pray the rosary. And any chance there was an evening mass, I would go, and I would be on my bare knees praying to God to just be like, can you just not let this happen right now? Like, if you don't, I don't have to have the baby. So it was God's will for me to still be pregnant, obviously. So the Feast of the Assumption, it was August 15th. The father called me, and he's like, let's get married. And I was like, okay, what do I have to do? He said, you have to move here. You have to move to Michigan. And I was like, okay. San Diego was my home. I was living there for 10 years, and he's telling me like, only way for me to get married is to move there. So I was like, okay, so when are we getting married? He's like, well, whenever you want. I was like, as soon as possible. Like, I want to be married. I don't want this child to be born out of wedlock. I don't want that eye on him or anybody saying anything bad about him because, or you know what I mean? It was mainly like, I don't want people treating him differently because he's not born in a traditional marriage. So he's like, okay, how about a month? I was like, okay, let's go. All right. I let my work know that I had to leave, and it was so sad because I really did enjoy the job. I enjoyed the work. I had to basically pack up my life in a couple boxes. I had to downsize everything, and I moved across the country, not knowing anybody in Michigan, and started over. It was the hardest thing I ever did because people usually have a couple years to process and plan a marriage. Like, okay, this is our, like everything, they have a minute to process things. And I went from being, a 20-something-year-old career woman to being married and pregnant with a child in a matter of 6 months. So, and moved across the country. It was a lot. It was just a transition where I was alone. I felt really lonely, and I lost touch with all my family. So again, it was tied with shame. On my wedding day, there was nobody there. It was just the child's father and I. And the maid of honor and best man were people I had just met on my wedding day. It wasn't what I expected, but I was like, this is what, this is what I guess I should do. So I didn't feel as accepted by my family. I'm not sure if it was just my own insecurities because of the unplanned pregnancies, or if it was, something that was real, but I felt like unwelcome. I felt shame. I felt like I couldn't show my stomach. Like, so when my belly started showing, I felt shame. Like, I wasn't proud of being pregnant. So fast forward to the delivery day. On March 9th, 2014, I became a mother. And, after like it was healthy delivery, just all of a sudden, like machines started going off and the doctors like came in. All these doctors and nurses rushed in the room. And it was after he was already out, and they're looking, inspecting like the umbilical cord and placenta and stuff like that. Sorry, I was TMI. But they were like looking at things, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why are these doctors doing this? And it wasn't until like after they checked out, Ashton was great. He was healthy. They finally like let me have him. And I guess his umbilical cord was not directly attached to my placenta. So he had this weird condition where his umbilical cord was attached to the placenta by a vein. And I guess that's considered high risk and something that's usually caught at the anatomy ultrasound. There's a specific word for it. I just don't know it off the top of my head. It's like a medical term. I don't know. It's very fancy. But so if they caught that at the anatomy ultrasound, what would have happened is that I would be on bed rest and that he would have to be born via C-section. So I would have to give birth to him in a cesarean because contractions or literally anything for that matter could easily detach the umbilical from the placenta, and he would be a stillborn essentially. And I wouldn't know. It's not something I could feel. But the fact that he was born, despite that, the doctors told me it was 1 in a million chance that a child with this condition and undetected would be born with no health complications. So I was like, okay, God really wanted him to be born. Like, despite everything, despite the odds, he really wanted him to be born. And so the first, coming home was very difficult. Like in my head, I was thinking like, you know, life would be so different having a baby, and it wasn't. It was hard. I mean, just for any first time mom, you know, any new mom, it's a big lifestyle transition. So the first 6 to 8 weeks were really, really difficult. Not just for me personally, but like things that were going on outside. And I wish I would have reached out to people or like a doctor or someone sooner, because I had really bad postpartum depression and really bad anxiety. And I was so scared to death, like that something would happen to my son. Um, but nothing happened. I just wish that I had the strength to reach out to people when I felt so lonely, because I didn't have like visitors. I didn't have anybody really. I didn't feel welcome. And again, that could have just been me not reaching out and asking people or just talking to people, because so much shame, again, like so much shame associated with being pregnant before marriage. So Ashton is 3 months old, and I found out I'm pregnant again. And I got triggered back to when I was in the bathroom at my parents' house, like fear, shame, guilt hit me all over again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what's their father going to say? What's he going to say? What are they going to do? Like that's right away triggered back to what people would say about me, or what they would, not what would God think, but rather, oh, what are people going to say? Like I was more consumed about what the father would say, what my in-laws would say, what my parents would say, like, oh, you're pregnant again. And I felt like, you know, I told the father, you know, and he was okay. He's like, okay, we're having another one. And I prayed about it, and I realized that God was testing me to see my loyalty to him, because before Ashton and before Benjamin, I made a mistake of not choosing life. And I was being tested to make sure I don't make the same mistake twice. So that's why I'm here.
And we are so grateful that you're here, Josephine. We appreciate your courage so much. We know there's people out there that can relate and who will benefit from your honesty. Thank you so much for sharing. Janice, when a Chaldean woman finds out she's pregnant unexpectedly, she experiences many emotions. Josephine talked about shame, anxiety, fear. What is the thing about being a Chaldean woman in this situation that causes such extreme anxiety?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Josephine for being so brave and speaking about her story. Tina, to answer your question, the reality of it is that as the Chaldean community, we're actually brought up from a very young age to know that reputation is very important in our community. The idea of someone finding out that we did something that is not acceptable and talk about it not only affected us, but it affected like the whole family. It would affect siblings, and it would affect parents, aunts, uncles, whoever. An unplanned pregnancy outside of marriage was exactly that. It was considered a stain on the reputation of the family. And I think that still today it is, but people are becoming a little bit more open about it, that it does happen and that it's not the end of the world. But I think that it's still very huge. I mean, even in preparing, for this talk, it was very difficult for us to find people that were willing to talk about this topic, because it's just something that we don't talk about. I was actually speaking to my cousin last night, and she was like, I didn't even know this was a thing in the Chaldean community. And I was like, wow, that's crazy to me, because it's huge in the Chaldean community, but we don't talk about it to the point where people don't, still to this day, don't think that it's an issue in the Chaldean community. And it's all because everyone that does it, it's hidden. Um, like our parents, aunts, and uncles, they tell us to do it in, like, if you're going to do it, it has to be quiet and it has to be quick. No one needs to hear about it. People that choose life are often judged or ridiculed, um, or there's a lot of talk about, oh well, they didn't get married, or they just got married because of that, and so it just affects everyone in that way because of the reputation aspect.
Right, thank you. Josephine, you mentioned that your sister and your priest offered you support and helped you to choose life for your son. How important is it to have someone to walk with you when you experience an unplanned pregnancy?
It's so important, because when you find out something that's obviously unplanned, you didn't intend for this, it was unintentional, it was a surprise. I mean, with anything, with any surprises, you're confused. It takes a long time to process such a life-changing revelation, especially something like becoming a parent. So it's very important that you are around people who encourage you, because dealing with someone who is undergoing like an unplanned pregnancy is similar to someone who is, I know it sounds extreme, but suicidal. You want to make sure you spare this person's life, right? Someone comes to you and tells you, I don't think I want to live. I don't want to live. We take suicide very seriously. So you want to make sure you're there. Like, listen, you're loved. Everything's going to be okay. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. We're going to get through this. It's okay. You're strong. That's the kind of reinforcement that every single woman needs if she faces an unplanned pregnancy. You're going to be okay. You're strong. I'm here for you. She already has enough fear and confusion and guilt and shame going on in her head. The last thing she needs is, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? That's the last thing. So hearing just those two people encourage me gave me the strength to persevere through the trials and tribulations that I was going through. So, yeah.
That is such an amazing way to illustrate that, because it's life and death. It's that important. So hopefully people will think about what you just said and think about it's worth it to be that support. Janice, who else is affected if a woman chooses to end her pregnancy? Is there a ripple effect that goes out to extended family and the Chaldean community and society in general?
Of course. Obviously the woman is affected with with a lot of different feelings and emotions. But the reality of it is that everyone that's involved in the abortion is affected. If we really think about it, the father of the child, whether they know about it or not, they're affected. Family members, whether they were for the abortion or against the abortion, whether they were being supportive or not supportive, they're affected. But also, there's been studies that have shown that it affects future relationships of those that have had abortions, whether it's the mother or the father. If they're together, it affects their relationship. If they separate and start trying to build new relationships, it affects those relationships outside of that. It also affects future or current children because of the sense of guilt and because of parenting techniques that might be affected due to the guilt and different things that the parents might be feeling.
So there's actually what we call post-abortion syndrome, which is a group of, effects and things that happen to a woman and sometimes the father as well after an abortion. Now, not everyone experiences them. Not everyone recognizes what's happening, but usually many of those symptoms are present. Can you talk a little bit about post-abortion syndrome and where someone can get help if they need help with that?
Absolutely. So, no matter the circumstances of the abortion, like I said, most people suffer in silence. There's always a sense of guilt and shame. A lot of times there's blame and anger, especially if they're pushed into the abortion and they didn't want it. There's also a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Like, I couldn't help my baby. I couldn't help myself. How can I move forward? And there's people fall into depression. Josephine talked about the similarities between suicide and abortion, and it's or like making that decision. And it's very similar that someone needs that support, and I agree with her completely. And honestly, there is so many resources out there. If you're in a situation where you have an unplanned pregnancy and you feel like you need support, you can always reach out to Right to Life of Michigan. They have a ton of resources. You can reach out to them by phone, on their website. You can reach out there's a lot of community resources, both Chaldean and non-Chaldean. There is post-abortive resources like Rachel's Vineyard. And you can always reach out to me if you feel like, what, I'm kind of lost and I just need someone to talk to. If you're comfortable, we can talk. If you want just to call me about referrals, you can call me, we can talk a few seconds. I can understand your situation and then provide you with referrals that you could benefit from. There's just a lot out there. The important thing though is that you just need to ask. Even the local churches now, even the Chaldean churches people have reached out to the Chaldean churches and said, Chaldeans are having a lot of abortions. We need to find out what we can do. And therefore, our churches have also been providing, have resources that they provide people if they need it.
Thank you, Janice. I know we've heard stories where a priest has stepped in and helped a woman who finds herself pregnant and not married, and even to the point of calling relatives, calling their aunt or whoever's giving them the hardest time and saying, look, this is a part of your family. And so our priests are very powerful advocates for the unborn.
Absolutely.
And many of them are becoming more and more outspoken and preaching about it, especially the young. Josephine, your story shows us that life may not be perfect once an unplanned pregnancy happens. In your words, no one's life is perfect. You're so right about that. But the choice to give your children life is really the only right choice. And just as God forgives abortion, he greatly blesses the mother who perseveres to give her child life. Can you tell us about how your boys have been that blessing for you in your life?
Absolutely. My boys transformed who I am. I thought I had it all before. I thought I was successful career, drove the car that I want, had like the reputation that I thought that's what I needed. And I realized what really mattered. And it's unconditional love. And that can only be given from children. And being a mom has blessed me in so many ways, has strengthened me, has made me have thick skin, and has strengthened my relationship with God. So yeah, biggest blessing in the world are my two beautiful boys. I mean, honestly, God blessed me with two beautiful, healthy children, and I cannot be any more grateful than I am.
Well, we couldn't be any more grateful to you for, like I said,